Hello, I'm Rico Caviglia, and I want to welcome you to your Ageless Body Self-Care Guide, your operations manual for the human body and mind. Now, the topic of this session is pharmaceutical drugs, their benefits, their dangers, and some alternatives. So this is such an important subject, as I just recently Googled this information, and it says it's known that at least 75% of Americans over 50 are taking medications, and people over 60 are taking an average of 4 medications. And we also know that there are many interactions between drugs, and they can have some serious side effects. So I'm really excited about this topic because we're going to get some real clarity on what you really need to know about drugs and when they may be beneficial, and when to take them and when not, and what you can do instead. So this is so important for you to be able to live that long, healthy, and energetic and productive life that we wish for you. So we're very fortunate to have as our expert, Ross Pelton. He's known as the natural pharmacist. Ross is the author of 13 books, including the Drug-Induced Nutrient Depletion Handbook, and he's the world's leading authority on the topic of drug-induced nutrient depletions. And he can be contacted, and you can find all his information at thenaturalpharmacist.net. And again, you can find all the information of what Ross has to offer you, and in the PDF that comes along with your product. So welcome, Ross. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi there, Rico. It's really nice to be with you, and I look forward to talking about some important topics related to anti-aging and life extension and healthy longevity.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. So I'm so happy to be here and that you're going to share your knowledge and wisdom with us. So my first question, it really is, do you agree that what is now called alternative medicine, really that should be mainstream medicine, and pharmaceutical drugs and radiation and surgery, should be alternative medicine?
I'm in total agreement with you. For a long time, I've been preaching the gospel of natural therapies and natural medicine, and I think for almost every illness, people should explore natural healing and natural therapies before the resort to medications or surgery and radiation, or more critical types of therapy. But when you have a problem, you don't want to have your first approach be something foreign that the body is not used to or is not normal for the body. You want to find out what the body needs and give it more of it to help it correct itself. And maybe you're getting too much of something like toxins, and so you might need to engage in a program of detoxification along with nutritional supplementation and things to kind of get the body back on track and doing what it's supposed to do. And nutritional therapies and natural medicine is really, that's the path and that's the message.
So tell us, why do pharmaceutical drugs, why do they always have side effects?
Well, Rico, the liver is where you detoxify substances that are foreign to the body, and all prescription drugs, or almost all of them, are foreign substances to the body. So they need to go through the liver detoxification pathways. And there are a lot of nutrients that are required for the different liver detoxification pathways. So if you're always taking drugs day after day after day, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8 different drugs on a regular basis, like many people in their mid to late years are taking 6, 7, 8 drugs a day. You're depleting the nutrients that the liver requires to detoxify those medications. And at the same time, a lot of people are on the standard American diet, which is nutritionally deficient in the first place. And so you kind of got a double-edged sword where people are on poor diets. And I've got dozens of studies in my database documenting the fact that the nutritional content of the commercially available food supply has been declining for the last 70 to 80 years, since World War II, when factory farming kicked into gear and they got into stopping crop rotations and using artificial fertilizers and just a wide range of changes in agricultural food production that has contributed to a lack of nutritional content in the food supply. So, but when you're taking medications, that you're just putting additional stress on depleting nutrients. And when those nutrients get depleted, then they build up toxic levels, or you have accelerated free radical damage, and you're accelerating the aging process.
Yeah, so those So the chemical medicines, the pharmaceutical drugs, they aren't something that's naturally needed by the body, right? There's something foreign, so the body has to do something with them. I mean,
Right?
they have their effect.
And they're just suppressing symptoms, so they're really
Yeah,
not correcting the problem. And so it just
yeah.
goes on and on and on.
Well, you originally were a pharmacist, so when and how did you decide that you wanted to start moving to natural compounds instead of
Yeah.
using pharmaceutical drugs?
Yeah, I was a traditional pharmacist for a lot of years and also a standard American diet for a lot of years. I used to eat fast food, McDonald's and Wendy's and all this other stuff. And in 1980, I just kind of on a chance fluke, I got introduced to yoga. And
Mm,
in yoga, I met people who were interested in health. They ate healthy diets and they exercised regularly, and they read health books and health newsletters and health magazines. And with my background in science and medicine, I just started to absorb this health-related literature like a sponge,
mm,
and I have been absorbing it ever since. I've been passionately, or maybe even neurotically, committed to health-related therapies and learning about health and passing this information on to people ever since the 1980s. And I started to write articles on it and started to write books on it and teach seminars on it. And I've been doing that ever since for about the last 40 years.
yeah, well, see, we're so fortunate that someone like yourself, with a science background and like say wants to study and learn all that that got introduced to this, and now you're making a great contribution. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm really a recovering pharmacist.
I know you told me that
Path
sounds pretty good,
path
right?
to health
Yeah.
and wellness.
Okay, so a little bit more about chemical medicine, pharmaceutical drugs. I mean, obviously there's some circumstances when they can be life-saving and they're needed. And so talk about some of that and when they are a viable alternative.
Well, pain medications are oftentimes absolutely essential. And people have a critical event like a heart attack or a stroke, or they got blood clots and so forth, then they probably need some medications for a while. And so it's not, I'm not saying that all medications are bad. I'm just saying that our medical system and our healthcare system, in fact, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a disease care
Right,
system.
right.
And the primary thing that is problematic in our healthcare in America is chronic degenerative diseases or
Hmm.
diseases of lifestyle. And traditional medicine is a massive failure at treating these conditions. They just diagnose it, they give people medications to mask or suppress the symptom, but they're not correcting the problem. And so for emergency medicine, the American United States and medical system and emergency medicine is above any place in the world. But for chronic degenerative diseases, we're a miserable failure. And so people need to start looking at diet and nutrition and lifestyle and natural medicine to correct these problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the main message here is that, for acute situations, like if you get into an accident, man, modern medicine and modern drugs can save your life and put you back together. But for most chronic ailments that you mentioned, that most people are going to see doctors for, all these treatments are pretty much not effective, and they can be downright dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Downright
We're
dangerous.
all in the
Yeah.
background here. It'll be done in just a second there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So well, you've already mentioned that. That was my question next. You already mentioned that how these pharmaceutical drugs, all they really do is alter your body chemistry, and they just mask the symptoms for a while, but they don't heal anything, and they don't get your body back in balance, so your body can heal itself, right?
They create a nutritional load on your system. You're
All right. Yeah.
utilizing nutrients to detoxify things and lowering your level of nutrients. And so that's another part of the problem, is creating nutritional deficiencies. And then, of course, I'm the world's leading expert on this topic of drug-induced nutrient depletions. There's a copy of my book, Drug-Induced Nutrient Depletions, which is basically a reference book for physicians and pharmacists and other healthcare professionals. Then I wrote a second book on this topic called The Nutritional Cost of Drugs, which
Mm,
is more geared to the general public. It goes into more detail about the health benefits of the nutrients and the health problems associated with the nutrient depletions. And in both of these books, I'm telling people and educating people about the nutrients that are being depleted by the drugs they're taking, And think about people who are nutritionally deficient to begin with, or at least
Right.
on the fine edge of nutritional deficiency because of poor diets and the agricultural food system and so forth. Then they go to the doctor with a problem and get a medication that they expect is going to help them. It's causing more nutritional deficiencies that just tips them over and starts to create more health problems. So it's a fairly common problem, these nutritional deficiencies that are created by the drugs people take.
Yeah. I think it's important to note too that, you know, big pharma, the big pharmaceutical companies, it's been shown time and time again, they really don't have your health in mind. They have their profits, their bottom line in profit, because as you know very well, you know, there's been instances where some of their drugs have killed hundreds of thousands of people, and they just pay a big fine, get a little slap on the wrist, and they just continue. So it's all about how much money they can make and not really about your health. So I think that's important for people to really understand that.
Yeah, absolutely right. And one thing, another thing I'll mention to our viewers here, Rico, my books on drug-induced nutrient depletions are out of print, and you can get used copies on Amazon, but they're pretty expensive because they're collector's item. But I did recently create a quick reference guide for
Right,
drug-induced
yeah.
nutrient depletions, and I will give any of your viewers a free copy of this if they just send me an email at ross at naturalpharmacist.net, and or they can just type in their browser naturalpharmacist.net/DIND, which stands for drug-induced nutrient depletions. And we'll give that link in the show notes at the end of our video.
Yeah, that's a really a valuable gift. I really appreciate it. But again, you don't have to worry about that. All that information is going to be in the PDF. You know, everybody will have that PDF, so they'll have all that information. I definitely recommend that you want to get a copy of that. So that's so good. So tell us about some of the natural compounds and herbs and things that you discovered and found, and how they work, how they work differently in the body.
Well, I can give a couple of examples of where natural medicine is equally or more effective than the traditional drugs that people take. Take blood pressure.
Mhm.
Coenzyme Q10 is the most remarkable
Oh
natural
yeah.
therapy for lowering blood pressure. And there's a cardiologist in Austin, Texas, that I've been following for decades. And he did a study. He had 109 of his patients that had high blood pressure. He's a cardiologist, so we've got a lot of patients with high blood pressure. And these patients were people that had been diagnosed on average around 9 to 10 years. So they've been on blood pressure medications for many years, many of them taking 2 or 3 blood pressure medications to keep their blood pressure within acceptable ranges. So this doctor put his patients on high dose coenzyme Q10, and within 6 months, 51% of these patients came totally off all their blood pressure medications.
Yeah.
But as a pharmacist, when I'm counseling people, back in the days when I was standing in a pharmacy counting pills, if somebody's picking up a prescription for a blood pressure medication, I can't just cavalierly say, hey man, you need to be taking coenzyme Q10,
Hmm.
because it's so effective at lowering blood pressure. They have to monitor their blood pressure. They need to be in touch with their doctor. The doctor needs to make decisions about when and how much to lower the blood pressure medication dosages, because it's illegal for me as a pharmacist to counteract a doctor's orders.
Hmm.
But it's really important for people to track their blood pressure, because coenzyme Q10 will lower your blood pressure if you have elevated blood pressure. And I mentioned that he put them on high dose coenzyme Q10. They didn't use a specific dosage. They used whatever dose was required to reach a target blood level, and the
Hmm.
average dose was 225 milligrams per day. Couple of things about coenzyme Q10 as an effective natural therapy. It's a fat-soluble nutrient, and we don't absorb fat-soluble nutrients very efficiently. So if you take it at your largest meal of the day, where there's some more fat in the meal, the fat in the meal will enhance the absorption of coenzyme Q10. And another topic I'm really, really hot on these days, Rico, is the importance of crystal-free coenzyme Q10. Most coenzyme Q10 products on the market have horrible rates of absorption because they form crystals, and we cannot absorb chunks of coenzyme Q10. when it's in crystal form. We can only absorb single molecules. So in the show notes, I'll give people a link to a company in Denmark called
Okay.
Pharmanor that has a patent system to keep their coenzyme Q10 in solution, give much higher blood levels, much better outcomes. And the majority of all the large clinical trials around the world for the last 2 to 3 decades have used Pharmanor's coenzyme Q10 because of its crystal-free nature and their patented process for keeping it in solution.
We'll talk about a few more things that maybe you have some experience with, or such as herbs and homeopathic remedies and all these different kind of natural remedies, and what's some of the value of some of those?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of herbal products that are really very effective. Again, herbal products are things that occur naturally in nature,
Mm-hmm.
and we have evolved with these things for hundreds of thousands of years. So things like echinacea to boost your immune system, things like mistletoe, a really, really effective alternative cancer therapy. I encourage people to really explore that if they're dealing with cancer because it's really effective, but you need to get good quality mistletoe. And oftentimes the best quality herbs are herbs that are sourced in their locally grown environment rather than
Mm-hmm.
grown commercially someplace in a part of the country or a part of the world is not the right climate and
Right.
the right sunlight and moisture and all that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of different herbs that are really helpful. Ashwagandha is a fabulous herb.
Mm.
Cordyceps is a great herb. And so, in fact, I used to teach a 2-hour seminar on herbs to pharmacists and other healthcare professionals. So there's a lot of different herbs that can be very beneficial. Um, and just an example, we're talking about how nutrients can affect your health and create some problems if you don't have enough of them. Um, when I wrote the Drug-Induced Nutrient Depletion Handbook, I was astounded when I learned that oral contraceptives deplete more nutrients than any other class of drugs.
Mm.
And so that gave me the insight on why more women than men have sleep problems and problems with depression and so forth, because I'm standing behind a pharmacy counter for years and years handing out these prescriptions. And I kind of intuitively see that more women than men suffer from these problems. Well, now I get a better understanding of that because millions and millions of women are daily taking oral contraceptives that are depleting things like magnesium and CoQ10 and folic acid. And these are nutrients that are critical for energy production. And think about a woman who's been taking oral contraceptives for maybe 10, 12 years, seemingly without any problems. But over the last 6 months, she's complaining to her spouse or her significant other, honey, I just don't have any energy anymore. I can hardly drag myself out of bed in the morning.
Mm.
She's not likely to connect the dots and realize that the oral contraceptives she's been taking without problems for years is now starting to cause problems because B12, B6, magnesium, CoQ10, folic acid, all these nutrients are being depleted and they're all required for energy production. And a depletion of any one of those can cause low energy, lethargy, and anemia and things like this. So this is one thing I emphasize is that side effects from drugs usually happen pretty quickly. You get vomiting, nausea, you got a skin rash or something. So you pretty much within 24, 36 hours,
Yeah.
you got a side effect from a drug going on. But these drug-induced nutrient depletions had to happen gradually over time. And people are less likely to connect the dots and realize
Mm.
that a drug they're taking is causing a nutrient depletion that's causing another health problem. And many times when people get a health problem from drug-induced nutrient depletion, they go to the doctor and get another prescription for another drug when they
Exactly.
really need to know what's the proper nutrient to take to prevent these problems or correct these problems.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a little extra information about the importance of this topic on drug-induced nutrient depletions.
Yeah, that's why your book is so important because, I really haven't, as much as I've been into, the health field and all this for so many years, I never really heard anybody else talk about that. And like oral contraceptives, there's some other problems, but I never heard about nutrient depletions. That's so important. So this is really some really good information that people are getting. Well, tell us about what are some of the health challenges, issues that people are having that you've seen that really respond well to some of these natural compounds,
You know,
aside
almost
from
almost
almost
every
everything.
health problem will respond to natural therapy. If you
Hmm.
work with body and correct the problems, get rid of the toxins and get the proper amount of nutrients and the correct diet coming in, the body will respond. It's remarkable. And one of the things that responds really quite quickly is correcting problems with gastrointestinal problems.
Mm-hmm.
The term for these gastrointestinal problems, the umbrella term is dysbiosis.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is just an umbrella term for gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, pain in the gut, so forth. And all of these problems happen because you have an imbalance between the good and the bad bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
And the term for the bacteria in your gastrointestinal system is called the microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
And we have an estimated 100 trillion organisms in our gastrointestinal system. And a healthy person should have maybe about 85 or 90% good bacteria and only 10 to 15% bad bacteria. We all have some bad bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
But when things are in balance and you have a vast majority of the good ones, the bad ones can't get out of hand and become overgrown and overpopulated and create problems. But one of the most important things to have a healthy microbiome, and we now understand that the health of the gut is really central and foundational to the health of the entire body. You're not just talking about gut health. There's gut-brain communication, and every single organ system responds to and is regulated by the bacteria in your gastrointestinal system and the compounds those bacteria make. And so if you want to create and maintain a healthy microbiome, the most important nutrient to know about and understand is fiber. Because fiber is the food or the nutrient for your probiotic bacteria, the good bacteria in your gastrointestinal system. And one of the
Prebiotic, right?
Yeah, and they're called prebiotics.
Yeah,
Your
prebiotics.
probiotic are the bacteria. The
Mm-hmm.
prebiotic is the term for the foods, and they should be high fiber-rich foods. And one of the studies I present in a lot of my seminars and presentations documented the fact that 95% of American children and adults do not consume the recommended daily allowance of fiber.
Yeah.
If you don't feed your bacteria fiber, if you don't learn how to feed them well, they will not thrive and survive, and you will have an unbalanced gastrointestinal system because if you're not taking in fiber, you're starving your good bacteria, and that gives the bad bacteria a chance to proliferate and grow and take over, and you got gut problems. And then when you have gut problems, you get intestinal permeability, which is leaky gut, and then bad things leak from your intestinal system into your systemic circulation, and then you get things like ADD and ADHD and autism and autoimmune diseases and an increase in virtually everything. So gut is foundational to everything. And when I say fiber is the #1 nutritional deficiency in our culture. A lot of people give me pushback and they say, wait a minute, fiber is not a nutrient. It's not a nutrient for us. These fibers are non-digestible. They go through your gastrointestinal system undigested, no nutritional value for us. But when they arrive in your colon, your bacteria start to ferment them and digest them. And so that's the food for your bacteria that regulates your entire health. And one of the things that we're learning in the last number of years, Rico, is that when bacteria ferment fibers in your colon, they create secondary compounds that we call postbiotic metabolites. And now we're learning that it's these postbiotic metabolites that are master health regulating compounds for the entire human body. It's not so much the bacteria that are important, but it's the compounds the bacteria make when they digest the fibers. So there's really two parts to the puzzle to a healthy microbiome and a healthy immune system. The bacteria, and you gotta feed the bacteria a diverse range of fibers. And we know from lots of different studies now that the healthiest microbiome and the healthiest gastrointestinal system is a diverse range of species of bacteria. So it's not just a lot of species of one, it's smaller amounts of a wide range of different types of bacteria. So a lot of people are confused or misunderstand this concept of CFU when they're looking at probiotics. CFU stands for colony forming units. It's really just a term that denotes the number of viable bacteria in a dose of probiotic. And people play the numbers game. Mine's got 30 billion, mine's got 50 billion, mine's got 100 billion. When you take probiotics that have a very high number of just one or several strains, you're working against diversity and balance in the microbiome. So the only way you can create and maintain diversity in your microbiome is to consume a wide, diverse range of different types of fiber-rich foods. So it's not just a lot of one type of fiber. You want to try and get as many different types of multicolored fruits and vegetables in your diet every day as you can, because when you eat, every time you eat, you're not just feeding yourself, you're throwing a party and feeding 100 trillion guests. And you got to think about that every time you eat.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
feeding them, and they're regulating your life. With the Human Microbiome Project, which is the first big funded study by the government to look into the microbiome and probiotics and so forth, one of the most important things they learned is that there are approximately 10 times more bacteria in our body than there are human cells in our body. But more
Yeah.
interesting than that, they learned that over 99% of the DNA in your body is the DNA of your bacteria. That's why we don't have to have so many genes in the nucleus of our cells. We've got about 24,000 genes. Scientists thought they'd find out that humans had a much larger number of genes, but it was only 22 to 24,000. Bacteria in your GI tract have over 3.3 million
No.
non-repeating genes.
Yeah.
Well over 99% of the DNA in your body is the DNA of your bacteria. And that's why we don't have to have so many genes, because our bacteria are doing so much of the work in our system, digesting food, regulating the absorption of food, gut-brain communication, your immune system. A vast array of things, biological functions in your body are handled by your bacteria. So you better learn to appreciate them and feed them well.
That's so good. That's so good. And we've known for a long time that antibiotics destroy, a lot of the good bacteria in our gut. So we know we really want to avoid antibiotics unless they're really critical. If you're having an infection, you've got to have them. But what about other pharmaceutical drugs? They probably have an effect on the gut as well, right?
Rico, that's a great topic. I'm glad you brought it up. And first, I want to acknowledge that antibiotics save lives. There's
Right.
no argument about that. But there's a really serious health crisis now with the overprescribing of antibiotics. Many doctors prescribe antibiotics when they're not necessary. Majority of kids that go to the doctor for an inner ear infection, they get an antibiotic. It would clear up in 2 to 3 days without antibiotics. And before you get your teeth cleaned, oftentimes the dentist gives you an antibiotic. And there's so many antibiotics. People go to the emergency room or one of these walk-in clinics and they've got an upper respiratory infection. They get an antibiotic. It's a virus. You don't need an antibiotic for that. And so now we have a situation where there's a rapid increase in the rise of these antibiotic-resistant superbug infections, like MRSA, that's methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, and now there's antibiotic-resistant Clostridium difficile and antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis. There's a wide range of these, and they're increasing astronomically. It's one of the most serious health crises in the history of the world, and it's a global health crisis. We're moving in the direction where antibiotics will no longer be effective. And that's going to be a big, big problem for mankind.
Yeah.
So we've got the problem with antibiotics, and they put antibiotics in most of the commercial animals that are made, commercial beef, commercial chicken, commercial pigs, farm-raised fish. They put antibiotics in all these animals. So people are getting microdoses of antibiotics and antibiotic-resistant bacteria all the time if they're eating the commercial food supply. I strongly advise people to eat an organically grown diet, GMO, non-GMO, avoid the GMOs, and get pasture-raised beef and cage-free chickens and eggs from cage-free hens and wild-caught rather than farm-raised fish. Is really critical to just consume a healthy food. In fact, a lot of people ask me, what's the best diet to be on? What's the healthiest diet? food without labels.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that, food without labels, food that grows naturally in nature, bell peppers and carrots and parsley and oranges and apples and so forth. There's no label that tells you about a whole bunch of other things that are in it. Food without labels should be the primary focus of everybody's diet. And that doesn't mean you can't have a tub of yogurt or a few crackers someday or something, but on the majority of people's food should be food without labels, fruits and vegetables and whole unprocessed grains and healthy proteins and healthy fats.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I call it real food, but I like that, food without labels. That's absolutely right. Well, just one more thing. So what would you recommend people, what I normally recommend, if you're having some kind of health issue, you should go see like a naturopathic doctor or really a
Yeah,
qualified nutritionist, right?
you bet. Yeah, no, I have a great deal of respect for naturopaths. They're health-oriented doctors. They study natural medicine. Also, oftentimes osteopaths can have more knowledge about the body and manipulation of the body. And there are a lot of chiropractors that have a good background in nutrition. There are people that are certified clinical nutritionists. That's me. I've got a certification in clinical nutrition along with being a pharmacist. But also there are health-oriented doctors. If you look into the American Association of Anti-Aging Medicine or the Institute for Functional Medicine. These are several different organizations that have really good training programs for physicians in natural medicine. So go into those websites and search. They've got a link where you can just put in your zip code and find a doctor 10 miles, 25 miles from your address and find a health-oriented doctor someplace close to where you live.
Well, Ross, I want to thank you so much. That was so great, so much great information. I think it's some really valuable information. And so my last thing is I want to ask you, and then I'll have just a comment is, what
Um,
what ideas do you have to get people to actually take action on what you say? And just like all of our experts, it's one thing to have knowledge, but if you don't take action on it, it's useless. So what ideas do you have to motivate people to actually take action on what you just been talking about?
Well,
That's a tough one.
Rico, I don't know, your audio and video are cutting out a little bit in the last
Oh,
few
really?
things you said, but
Oh,
yeah, but in closing here, let me just mention, in fact, there's just a note that the internet connection was unstable, so maybe that's what
oh,
happened to us there. But let me just mention something else to our listeners. I talked about the importance of the microbiome and the fact that our bacteria convert fibers into secondary compounds that really are master health regulating for the body. These compounds are referred to as postbiotic metabolites.
mhm,
And I'm the scientific director for a Dallas-based company that specializes in premium probiotics. And we have a product called Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics that is made in a multi-year fermentation process that allows the bacteria time to digest these fibers and create these postbiotic metabolites. So Dr. Ohhira's Probiotic is, I feel, the best product in the world for digestive complaints and to create and maintain a healthy microbiome,
mhm,
because Dr. Ohhira's doesn't just have probiotic bacteria in it. It's got probiotics, it's got some of the prebiotic food supply, but most importantly, it delivers over 500 of these postbiotic metabolites. And so when you take them, they immediately start to have anti-inflammatory activity. They kill pathogens, they reestablish gut-brain communication, they reestablish the acid-base balance in the gut. When people take a regular commercial probiotic that's just probiotic bacteria in a capsule, those bacteria have to survive the transit through the harsh acid in the stomach. And
mhm,
then when they reach the stomach, in order to be beneficial at all, they have to find fibers and start the process of converting those fibers into the postbiotic metabolite. That takes time. And a lot of people aren't eating high fiber diets to begin with. So Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics is the #1 direct delivery system in the world for delivering these postbiotic metabolites that will rapidly transform a gastrointestinal system from dysbiosis type complaints back into a healthy situation.
yeah. So once again, you can find all this information in the PDF that comes along with this
We put a link in
training.
there for the article I've written on this so people can get a free copy of that
Yeah,
article.
all that information will be in there. Anything, whatever you want to put in there. So again, I just want to urge you to take action on all these recommendations that you're learning, because they absolutely will make a big difference in your health and your enjoyment of your life. And The healthier you become, the better your life becomes, and the better the life of everyone you touch becomes as well. So thanks very much again, Ross. I really appreciate that. Was great.
All right. Good luck and good health to you and all of our viewers.